Welcome to a discussion on New Farmers Movement and Gandhian strategy. Today's discussion is related to our master's program in Gandhian Peace Studies and postgraduate certificate program in Gandhian Peace Studies. This specifically relates to the environmental issues and Gandhian strategy towards environmental issues and towards the issue of the farmers. When we talk about Indian society, Indian rural society, we usually come across varieties of movements, those who are spearheaded by the peasants, the farmers and the tribal people. So, India itself has inherited a rich legacy of peasant revolt and farmers movement. To begin with, we have got the Bhil movement, the Bhil tribals movement in 1822, 1823, 1837 and also 1860s. The Deccan peasant revolt 1875, the Mopla revolt we talk about 1921, the Mostly Satyagraha 1921-24, struggle of the Orlis 1945, Birsa Munda movement, it also in the Naga peasant uprising 1830-33. This is a wide variety of the peasant movement. Within that we find when Gandhiji came into the scene of Indian independence struggle, he also started his political career by participating in the peasant movement, spearheading the cause of the peasants, the Champaran movement 1819, the Bardole movement, the Khera movement. So, the Gandhiji was quite explicitly present in that movement. Then we find varieties of the peasant movement, those are spearheaded by the Marxists and the socialists. The Telangana movement 1946-51, the Tebaga movement 1946-49. Then we find Kangdo Satyagraha, Naxalbari movement, the Lalgarh movement. These are the movements widely spearheaded by the Marxists. Then we find the arrival of the farmers movement in Uttar Pradesh, in Karnataka, Maharashtra, Punjab, Gujarat and also in Tamil Nadu. At this stage, we will be needing a kind of clarification to understand who are the peasants in the society and who are the farmers. When we talk about the peasant in the society, we usually talk about the peasants are those marginal cultivators, the agricultural laborers, the sharecroppers, those who are engaged in land for a livelihood by their own labor for their subsistence cultivation. So, it is for their mainstaying of agriculture, for their mainstay, they are engaged in agriculture for the subsistence. It is for the sustenance and subsistence of the family, they are engaged in agriculture, either as sharecroppers, agricultural laborer, tenants or small cultivators. Many of them may be the part cultivators, part fishermen, part laborers. So, varieties of combination comes in, but their mainstay is dependent on what we call on the land. Then we have another category whom we call the farmers. Farmers are usually considered the big landowners, those who are involved in the cultivation of land, not necessarily by themselves. They may or may not be engaging themselves in the cultivation of land, but they are engaged in large scale commercial cultivation to make profit out of agriculture, invest in agriculture and to make their life based on the profit they are accumulating by engaging in agricultural activities. So, farmers are the commercial cultivators we can take as an operational definition. In Indian society, we are usually having three categories. We call it the Malik, Kishan and the Mazdoor. Malik are the people, those who are the big landowners. So, it is the farmers belong to the category of the Malik. Kishan are the people, those who are engaged in the cultivation may or may not be for the profit making, may or may not be only for the subsistence. So when you talk about the Kishan may be a farmer, Kishan may also be the peasant. It will dependent on the motives of that cultivation. Then those who are the Mazdoor, obviously they are the peasant, they are the sharecroppers, they are the tenants. So we find those categories to be reckoned with, to be recognized in the Indian context. When India got independence, when Gandhiji was also spearheading the movement, he found enormous agrarian inequality in the society. So there were the big landowners, simultaneously there are the jamindars, the intermediary landowners between the state and the cultivators. So immediately after independence, looking at the plight of the agrarian people, especially of the peasants, in the first 5-year plan itself, the land reform was introduced in 1955. The land reform law widely prescribed 5 objectives. Number 1, abolition of the intermediaries. The jamindars, jotedars, those who are the big absentee landowners, they are abolished. Number 1, jamindari system was abolished. Second, all cultivators are brought under the state, because directly they got the land from the state. There was no intermediaries. So intermediary system was abolished. Then ceiling restriction was given that nobody can possess land more than 25 acres of land, nobody can possess. So ultimately it was also brought down in 1971, it was brought down to the 17 acres of land. No farmer can have land more than 17 acres. After the land ceiling, it came the third objective, distribution of the surplus vested land among the landless people. So those many of the people, those who are the landless or semi-landless, lands are distributed among those landless people. And the fourth are the productivity from the land and the tenurial security. So it was widely talked about, this not simply the land distribution, there also to be more productivity from the land, because at that point of time a huge proportion of Indian population was dependent on agriculture, both for the wealth generation and also for generation of the employment. That land reform, the philosophy of the land reform continued, and in many parts of the country, especially in West Bengal and Kerala, these were strictly implemented. But simple land reform has not brought productivity to the land, because India was experiencing a huge food shortage in mid-1960s. And many of the agricultural specialists, especially from United States and other countries, they predicted that millions of Indian people are going to die because India is going to have enormous food shortage. At that point of time, starting from mid-1960s, the Ford Foundation started planning under the leadership of famous agricultural scientist of India, M.S. Swaminathan, to plan for introducing a new agricultural technology in some selected areas of the country on an experimental basis. So it was the Punjab, Western UP, Haryana become the northern part, then some parts of Maharashtra, some parts of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka become the sites of experimentation. And gradually, within few years, we found that India introduced a lot of technological innovation in agriculture in terms of tractors, in terms of weedicides, in terms of thresher, harvester, and also simultaneously new biochemical innovations, high-yielding variety seeds, high-yielding crops, those, and also chemical fertilizers, pesticides, weedicides were introduced in the land, and we found by 1971 the huge kind of increase in the productivity of the land took place. And those increase in the agricultural productivity, that innovation of or introduction of new technology is widely termed as green revolution in Indian agriculture. And that created a phenomena of increasing agricultural inputs, the changing production relation in agriculture, and productivity increased in that way, that is before 1960s, per hectare productivity from the land was to the extent of roughly around 9 to 10 quintal. It increased to more than 22 quintals per hectare. So, quantum increase in the agricultural productivity. With this increase of agricultural productivity, the new kind of organization of production of agriculture started coming in, new aspiration of the farmers started coming in. Also they started articulating their new kind of aspiration along with new kind of strategy for their increase of agricultural productivity. Also they generated new kind of demand from the state and the society for their social well-being and well-being of the farmers specifically. Farmers movement is also, many of the social scientists talked about the farmers movement as a new social movement, and also because it is the farmers, it is not that farmers those who were existed pre-1960s. It is a new variety of the farmers. They have appeared in the society with new kind of outlook. They have introduced new modern and new technologies in agriculture. They have tested the productivity, high amount of productivity. They have also generated, they have also got new kind of aspiration. So new kind of aspirational farmer we find it, and they have also produced new kind of social movement founded on Gandhian philosophy of non-violence, Gandhian philosophy of negotiation, and also at time fulfilling varieties of the social needs. So what we find that many of the elements of farmers movement also linked to the new social movement, because it has created a new kind of identity in the society, and many of these identities are founded on the philosophy of non-violence, subjectivity, morality, and obviously a kind of mobility in the society having interlinkages with the formation of the local need and the global concern. What we find that is the new social movement, the farmers movement, is founded in many ways with the Gandhian philosophy of non-violence and Gandhian strategy of mobilizing the people. And many of the farmers movement, because farmer movement started spreading from Punjab, UP, Haryana, then Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and also in Maharashtra. Many of the farmers movement, especially the farmers movements in Karnataka, explicitly pointed out that they are following the Gandhian strategy of non-violence to suffice the need of the farmers and also to negotiate with the state to compel the state to meet the demand of the farmers. So we find that there is the explicit assertion and explicit kind of adoption of certain strategy. Those were accepted by Mahatma Gandhi during the days of his struggle. When we talk about farmers movement, one of the leaders of farmer movement who became the Indian Prime Minister, Chaudhary Charan Singh, the former Prime Minister of India, and he organized varieties of the rallies following the Gandhian strategies and to make the people aware of the problem of the farmers. By 1980s, it is by one decade of agrarian revolution, that one decades of green revolution, we have found that enormous proliferation of the output from agriculture in the wheat, in the rice, in the potato, varieties of cultivation. So farmers started articulating their own kind of a need. But there was an enormous kind of challenge they are encountering both from the state because of the state control and varieties of the items. They are also encountering varieties of the challenges from the industrialists. So they articulated varieties of the issues and organized varieties of the rallies. Charan Singh's rallies were, they are asking the parity in prices between the industrial product and the agricultural commodities. So whatsoever the industrial product, the parity be made between the product of industrial, the cloth, fertilizer, tractors, the industrial product, but